Okay. Well, welcome everyone. We just started doing quarterly virtual events where we get a chance to have existing founding members and some future residents, local friends, people who are shift curious, wanting to know more about the project, joining our community group calls that we're calling Grow and Gather. And it takes on a different flavor every event. This one is going to be focused on our fellow founding member, Lane Carlson. And so for those of you who are new to this space, I'm just going to ask that if you have questions about the project or you have questions about how to join the community or our homes and condos and lots that are available, that we reach out directly to our team and we can answer those questions for you guys and hop on a call outside of this event because we're going to be focusing on a really exciting, beautiful discussion here and a presentation from Lane about the healing impact and expansive nature of responsible, informed psychedelic therapy modalities. So I'm going to just pass it over to our beloved founder of Shift Esperanza, which is Matthew Blesso. Even though his name underneath says Raymond Breeley, he's using our director of development's computer here. But I'm going to pass the baton over to Matthew. So thanks for joining, everyone.
Raymond's right next to me, so there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
Jennifer. Hey, Greg, how's it going?
Good. How's it going, Matt?
Good. So, yeah, I'll introduce Lane because we've been friends for more than 15 years. I'm trying to remember. We were introduced to each other in New York because we were both doing philanthropic work. I was serving on a bunch of boards and doing fundraisers, and Lane had actually started his own not-for-profit that he was running at the time. And that's how we were introduced, and we've been friends ever since. And he's a very dear, close friend and a brother. And it's been great to watch him over the last decade evolve his path and his work with other people. And it's been really amazing to watch and witness and be a part of as well. But I'll let you, Lane, I'll let you jump into it, and why don't you talk a little bit about how you started in medicine work and how it's evolved to what you're doing today.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you, brother Matthew. Yeah, it's been quite a journey since our New York days. I'm going to see if I can turn my presentation on here. Let's see. Do I have controls, Hannah, to share?
Yeah, we gotta adjust that now that you're back in the room.
Yeah, send a request. I sent my.
Yes, you should be good to go. And if you guys, as the presentation goes on, if you have questions for Lane, I just ask that you save them for the end of the presentation. We'll open up a Q&A and we can ask Lane all of the questions and share some experiences together. So save your questions for the end, please. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. So I did a little, can you guys see the screen?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, very good. So again, yeah, my name's Lane. It's been really a fun journey getting to know Matthew and Ginger over the years. And, my journey through psychedelics, actually, I would like to go a little bit further back, kind of to my early childhoods. But I wanted to mention this, first of all, well, thank you for having me, at this first, I guess, initiation of bringing some members in to speak on, what their interests are. And I was looking at your Shift website and I saw this rewriting the way we live, grow, and gather together. So I did a little play on that. This is really about rewiring the way we live, grow, and gather together. And that's through psychedelics. Psychedelics have been a big part of my own life for quite a while. I would say it started much earlier, actually. My interest into psychedelics, 20 some odd years ago, having my first psilocybin experience, which was very profound, being able to tune in with nature, literally watching the earth breathe and, understanding that this is this living organism that we're all a part of, really made a profound impact on me. But hands up, by the way, if anybody's brand new to psychedelics here. Okay, good. Got a couple. So this is great. For the intro people, I always like to introduce How to Change Your Mind, which is a Netflix series. And it really gives a good understanding around what psychedelics can do for our brain and body and the rewiring that can happen. So a little bit about, my past with psychedelics. This is really around the soul revealed, embracing psychedelics as a path for healing and purpose. So, I was about 13 years old and I was diagnosed with depression. And I had no idea what that was. I just knew it was in a very dark place, sad all the time, crying all the time, had no idea what was going on. And, it was really, I understood later on, it was just something that was passed down through my family. Um, and not that I was trying psychedelics at that time, but I remember being prescribed antidepressants at 13 years old. And there's this weird realization. I was probably 2 weeks in. I was like, wow, do I have to take these the rest of my life? I remember asking my mom this, and she's like, no. And I was like, well, great. What do I have to do? And she's like, well, you gotta, take care of yourself. Get outside, do fun things, be with your friends. And this was the first time I really understood affirmations and mantra. And she's like, and you got to talk to yourself nicely, understand you're going to be okay. Your thoughts create your reality. And so from that point forward, I really understood health and wellness, eating right, getting good sleep, exercise, but most importantly, the positive self-talk that I was, introducing to myself. In my psychedelic journey didn't really start in until later in life, kind of my deeper experiences in my 30s, going through this, I guess, quarter life crisis around what's my mission, what's my purpose, going through a breakup. And I had researched ayahuasca for many years. And I finally found that, okay, this is the time. And during my first big psychedelic experience with ayahuasca, it was really revealing some of my untruths for myself, allowing my ego to dissipate. But it really then led my path into, discovering what's in my soul, what's hidden within my mind that needs to come out. And it really led down my path to what I'm doing now. It's fascinating because I think back, my first Aya experience, and then doing what I'm doing today I work full time as a psychedelic therapist, and I have a product line that we, serving microdose and gummies and drink mixes. We ship all over the place, and I would never thought I would be doing that right now. But it's been such a journey because I was able to witness what the psychedelics were able to do to me to really open up, reveal what's inside of my own soul for my own healing. And so we're going to get into a little bit about the soul and psychedelics and how, what's really worked for a lot of the clients that I work with. So whether you're brand new into this medicine or you've journeyed many times before, um, you get a good understanding of what works and what's worked for me. We can look at psychedelics as a flashlight. It's into the attic of the soul. They illuminate the forgotten memories, emotions, and stories that have been stored away. And it's not really to scare us, but to help us rediscover what's hidden beneath. And that really helped me. It was really, Aya and mushrooms that were that flashlight for me, the addict, the flashlight in the attic to go reveal these dark spots or these hidden areas within my life to start transforming. And there's a ton of very influential people that I would say are pioneers in the medicine space, in the psychedelics. We can go into, Maria Sabina is probably, you know, one of my great mentors. She was a psilocybin facilitator in Mexico. So there's a great number of people that started introducing this medicine into, the Western world, her being one of them. But I really wanted to touch on psychedelics. Like where did the name psychedelics come from? And we can look at, before psychedelics was termed, it was a hallucinogen. It was this, mind-altering substance. And it was really in the 50s where Humphrey Osmond, he was a psychiatrist, a British psychiatrist, he was working a lot with mescaline and LSD at the time to help, with mental illness. And what I really love about his work is he was, introducing a lot of the traditional methods, working with indigenous tribes to make sure that we're using this medicine properly. Aldous Huxley, who some of you may know, he wrote Brave New World. He actually asked Humphrey Osmond to lead him on a mescaline experience, and which led to his then book Doors of Perception. And he had such a profound experience, within the mescaline experience. And they were trying to come up, part of the reason Osmond really liked Huxley is his how he used words. And they were trying to coin this experience. What is this? They're coming up with different names, and I thought it was pretty funny. They thought it was funny at the time. Osmond wrote to Huxley, he said, "To fathom hell or soar angelic, just take a pinch of psychedelic," and that's where the name psychedelic came from. Because it's really, if you look at psyche, it's the mind and the soul, and delic is dulce, it's Greek, and that's really revealing. So this is mind, soul revealing. And so when we go into psychedelics, it has that ability to really play on the mind and the soul, like what needs to be revealed within us. And, there's, I actually can't see the bottom of my screen. There we go. So psychedelics aren't about escaping reality. They're about revealing deeper layers of the soul, helping us remember who we truly are beneath the surface. And, I gave my own, my own experience on that. It was really the ability for me to go reveal what was deep inside of me, the yearning to come out. And that was through the power of psychedelics. How do I move slides? Uh-oh. Hang on. You guys still there?
Yep, still with you.
Okay, good. For some reason, I cannot move my slide. Try that. Hopefully I don't have to do that every single time. All right, so the soul's reveal. During the time, psychedelics had this big surge in the 50s and 60s, but it really was in the 70s when we had this war on drugs, which really stopped a lot of the research that was going on at the time. Nixon, at this time, we obviously had the Vietnam War going on. We had all these, we call them the hippies of the time, really utilizing psychedelics to kind of not buy into the narrative anymore. And, the powers that be didn't really like that. We want people to buy into a forced narrative. And so that was the war on drugs. And it really brought research to a screeching halt. And it'd be amazing to see where we're at if that didn't happen. But I'd say we have a new little war on drugs right now. 2025 is, I think enough people now have realized the research and the studies around psychedelics, it's here to heal us. And that's what we're seeing now, where people are pulling away from the narrative around, prescription medication and coming back into what's natural, what can heal us in a positive way, and that is through psychedelics. Two really fun books I always recommend to my clients. I talk about the soul and mind being revealed. We can think of The Body Keeps the Score. This is a really interesting book around how psychedelics, it's not just psychedelics, it can be hypnosis, find this in meditation and breath work, but you can think of memories are stored in the body. And so as kids, if there's very traumatic things that happen to us, or maybe you're a soldier dealing with post-traumatic stress, there's memories that you can harbor and store away. Especially as young kids, we have to find ways to kind of override these really negative experiences in order for us to survive. And so through psychedelics, what happens is we put ego on check for a minute. We allow the ego not to be in control. And what happens is our body's able to finally speak to us. So whatever pain or trauma that we're harboring or we're holding on to can be revealed. And that's really the process of healing, is really applying that love to the place that hurts. And so if you have a bunch of trauma that you've been ignoring for a long time, and some of this is unconscious, that can come to the surface. And that's how we really can come to that place of healing. Because stored trauma can cause dis-ease or disease in the body. And it may not even be in this present life. That's the next book, There's Many Lives, Many Masters. This is about a hypnotist that actually, through hypnosis, taken his client through past life experiences. So I have clients the same way. They've had phobias of water. They don't know why. Nothing bad ever happened to them, but they realized in a past life experience that they drowned multiple times. And so when we were able to reveal this information, especially in a deep psychedelic experience, we're able to understand and give the aha moment and then let that go. And it's bringing that information to the surface. Sometimes when it's the unknown, we don't know what it is. And that's where we can heal. In a personal experience, I want to bring up one story. It was a client of mine who's been on antidepressants for 25 years. And she finally came in and she's like, I really want to get off these antidepressants. I don't know why. I was always sad. And it took about a year for us to finally get her to a place of titrating off of her antidepressants, utilizing microdose. So introducing something more natural to her system and titrating off to finally come into an experience. And through this experience, her first deep psilocybin experience, she able to reveal why she was so sad, depressed, and anxious and angry all the time. And it was very severe sexual trauma that she experienced from the age of 4 till, what we figure out is about 13, 14. And these were memories that she just blocked away. Again, because in order to survive, she had to shut down those memories. So I've been working with her for 5 years now. Every experience that we have, something new comes up. And although traumatic and although it's alarming, it's allowing her body to speak again. It's allowing her to finally come to that place of healing. So psychedelics are that ability for us to grow and learn about where that trauma comes from. Just to go into a little bit, like I see about 100 clients a year, and I would say most come into two forms. There's stress, anxiety, depression, and mission and purpose. These are the bigger intentions that people come in for. And I want to give you a little bit of lay of the land of what's really working for a lot of the clients. I mix in the worlds of spiritual psychology in with psychedelics. So I have a master's in spiritual psychology, and I found that it's not just the ceremony that's going to save you. There's no magic pill for anything. Unfortunately, you have to do the work. And that's where I mix in a lot of the spiritual psychology work in with psychedelics. So it's really the art of practice of conscious awakening with psychedelics. And that really goes into, most people when they're coming in, whether it's really wanting to understand mission or purpose in life or finding out why I'm stressed, anxious, and depressed, I always have them set a navigation. It's your intention for the experience. And it really comes into two fields. If someone comes into an experience that says, I want to learn how to make more money, I just kind of laugh. I'm like, okay, great. See how that works out for you. And we call that a goal line orientation. So people that constantly strive for, I just want more money. I just want the bigger house. I only want to, more men, more women, greater car. Those are all very goal line oriented intentions. Whereas the soul line is really what we're doing to better ourselves. So our meditations, our exercise, eating well, all of that leads to that place of love within ourselves, taking care of ourselves. So we got goal line versus soul line. And this is a graph. It's really around our goal line is if we constantly just striving in life for goal line oriented, it's the wolf that's never fed. We're just constantly wanting more and more and more. And I'm sure many of you have met, multimillionaires who are, depressed or, never satisfied. There's always striving for more. And that's real, and we look at the soul line of people that are really taking care of themselves. And what I like to look at is this graph. We want to have a combination of both. So it's okay to have great things in your life. It's okay to make money. It's okay to be abundant in life. But it comes from a different place when we're coming from the soul line. So coming from that heart space, coming from that high vibration, coming from that high frequency. So when people are setting their intentions especially in our ceremonies, I want to make sure that it's, we're meeting it from the soul line of life. Because happiness isn't always, as I explained, more money, more fame, more relationships, new homes. It's not that. But when it's coming from the soul line, we basically become magnets in life for greater conversations, better experiences, better community. That's a big, this is a big part of shift is, we want to make sure we're finding people that are working on themselves and striving for more and for greater community, because we all want to live in that peace together. And it all comes to love. That's what it all comes down to. And our great Albert Einstein, it's a universal force is love. And so that's where a lot of these experiences, even the traumatic stuff we're working on in life, it all leads us to this place of love. And on the opposite side, we've got our great Steve Jobs. Although he left an amazing ripple in this world, his quote is, this isn't me saying it, this is him. His nonstop pursuit of wealth will only turn a person into a twisted being just like me. So that's the goal line pursuit. It's just more and more and more where it can leave that expectation hangover. And I tell a lot of my clients, so go back into psychedelics are going to help you. They're going to be that tool. It's like going to a Tony Robbins or Joe Dispenza. And we have this amazing weekend and we learn so many new great things about ourselves. But if we go back to old patterns, if we go back to toxic relationships, if we go back to the bar and we're drinking every single night, it's your ceremony or your experience is going to be dissipated and you're going to go back to these old patterns that don't serve you. And it's funny, I always tell people, I'm like, look, 80% of your problems typically will go away when you understand your consumptions. What am I eating? What am I drinking? The thoughts that I'm thinking. So if we look at, you're consuming, what are you drinking? What are your foods? How are you exercising? Most importantly, what thoughts are you thinking to yourself? And that goes into our energy. I always tell people, you're given $100 worth of energy a day. How are you spending it? And if it is on, poor thoughts to yourself, you're drinking too much, toxic relationships, by the end of the day, you're basically depleted and you're going into reserves. And that's where we start causing that upset with inside of us. So these are a few important lessons or a few important points that I always share with my clients that really works. And those that stick with this, this process of, remembering their consumptions and taking care of themselves and their thoughts, these are the ones that really have the prolonged effect with psychedelics. So again, it's not a magic pill. Psychedelics are not going to just make all your problems go away. It's really what you do after the experience that matters. And that goes into, microdosing. Some people think, well, if I'm on a microdose, taking a small amount of microdose, I'm going to be okay because, I'm consuming microdose 3 to 4 times a week. I'm taking a day or two off. It's like, no, you have to add in everything that I was just talking about, taking care of yourself properly. We treat this as a way of life. It's really what Soul Line is all about it's a lifestyle. So the community you're with, the conversations you're having, what you're feeding your brain, news-wise, Instagram, this all counts. So we look at these as psychedelics as tools that can help us. A hammer can, build a house, but can also tear one down. So we look at it the same way. Psychedelics are that tool for us. And just, especially for the newcomers, microdosing is typically 0.1 grams per 100 pounds. So anywhere between, 0.1 to 0.3 is, a nice fun dose to microdose with, because we don't want to overtake it. We want people to be able to take microdose and still drive their car, go to work, take care of kids. And so that's been the power of microdose. A lot of my clients will, have the ceremony and then we'll do a 1 to 2 month protocol of microdosing afterwards. And that's really just to keep the frequency of the medicine in your system, and to help prolong the benefits. Microdosing and these deep psilocybin experiences have the ability to really shut down a part of our brain called the default mode network. That's where a lot of our chaos lives. That's where we're constantly, ruminating about the past, ruminating about the future. So microdosing allows us to just settle, allow us to just be present. And this came really at the forefront during the dot-com boom, the early 2000s, late 99. These coders were using microdosing of LSD and microdosing of psilocybin to help code. For 6 to 8 hours, they needed to be locked in and do these long form coding. This is, obviously before AI. So they really had to be intently focused on what they were doing. And, that led to a lot of our intellectual advancements of where we're at today. So we can thank psychedelics especially for these guys that were using it, and women. And a lot of people do that now because it really does. It's like the blinders of a horse. It allows you to just focus and, stick at task at hand. And that's what microdosing has the ability to do. And I take people up in, more heroic doses. We can do 5, plus grams. I would say as you start, you can't take it away once you start. So start small, work your way up. Many of you who've tried alcohol when you were kids for the first time, you had a bad experience if you took too much. We want to minimize that for people trying psychedelics. So start small and work your way up. We can have just as bad experiences if you're not ready for it. If you're young and you're just taking, so many people have these experiences. Like I ask them, how much did you take? I don't know. Where did you take it? I was at a rave in a basement somewhere. You're like, oh, like you got to treat this as a medicine. You got to have reverence for what you're doing. And so if you're doing it unconsciously and you're doing it in a, improper setting, you got what you asked for. For some reason, there we go. All right. So really, what this is really about building a relationship with the medicine. You can go into, I have a website called soulline.life where it's basically a protocol for people that are really interested in facilitating. It's a great intro course for people to go in. So I'm training other facilitators now to do this work. But really, I tell all my clients and, share with you guys too, is, become your own teachers and healers with this medicine. My whole idea is to, teach people how to use this medicine properly. There's those that have severe trauma. Yes, they need a guide, they need a facilitator, but eventually you get to the point where you can work with this medicine with reverence, for yourself. And so that's really the idea is, we can use this medicine as our friend, as our ally to help alleviate some of that stress, because we're all going through stuff in life. And so we really want to learn how to use this medicine as our ally, and become our best teachers with it. And, some of the long-term, I'd say the long-term growth for a lot of the clients, what's really worked is those that stick with it, those that stick with an integration process. Life itself is a constant process of ceremony and integration. Every single day we show up, so it's those that treat this to, to really manage that afterglow of a deep psilocybin experience, or maybe you're just getting into the microdosing and you've done a month or two. It's really treating this, how do I manage that afterglow? And that's really maintaining that frequency and vibration through, breath work, exercise, yoga, going to the beach, going on long runs, and, remembering those positive affirmations for ourselves. One of the really fun ways of doing this too is, we awaken to something new and it's really about managing the mission. So we've learned something new about ourselves through these deep psilocybin experiences, or maybe it's an LSD or MDMA. And a lot of people, I'll give you an example, somebody that came in recently, hadn't worked out in probably 10 years. And through their experience, part of it was understanding, oh my God, I need to really get back into the gym, start taking care of myself. And, she was committing through our integration process. I'm going to go to the gym every single day, next week. And I'm like, okay, no, you're not. Don't lie to yourself. When we create action plans for ourselves, we want to make sure that they're actionable. And that's why I call it a 3-foot toss. So, if you had to make a basket, a ball into a hoop from 3 feet away, it's doable. That's what I want to do with integration processes and practices with my clients is make sure that you're not going to cheat on yourself. Make sure that these are actionable steps for yourself. So we want to create 3-foot tosses, especially if something great comes up in our ceremony around conversations, changing jobs, you know, um, you know, I would say moving, any of these big things in our life, make sure that you're going to take 3-foot tosses, like actionable steps. And another big part of it, which is great with having community like Shift, is you share these stories with others. And these people in your life help keep you accountable. So that whether that's a loved one, your friends, or the community, is they can help keep you accountable. So that's why we want to keep good, positive people in our life to help keep us on track for what we are wanting to accomplish. So our inner experience and outward reality. The ego is not my amigo. So a lot of our, especially the work that we do with psychedelics is, it's about creating that positive inner world. And so, like mentioned in the past, if there is stored trauma, if we have instances in our life that we have yet to heal from, we're creating this unworthiness. We're creating this this inner reality that isn't positive for ourselves. So it's proven, and I've seen it so many times with so many of my clients. The more work that they do on themselves, coming into ceremony, doing the microdosing, but more importantly, the practices that they're doing after ceremony. So the breath work, the movement, eating properly, that's creating this positive inner experience for them. And so in that inner experience, outward reality. So the better that I'm feeling on the inside, the greater my outward experience will be. So it's a good way of looking at it. Inner experience, outward reality. And to kind of close this up, what is the shift? What is the shift in humanity right now? It's, how can we awaken consciousness? And I like to say, it's really up to us. It's up to you, stepping into this work through psychedelics, stepping into the work post ceremony. I don't know if anybody you've heard the 100th monkey effect. It's this phenomenon in which a new behavior or idea is spread rapidly by unexplained means from one group to the other related groups, regardless of geographic location, once a critical number is reached. Um, so, the story has it that, these monkeys were basically watching somebody crack coconuts open. And all of a sudden, one monkey learned how to crack a coconut open over a rock. Soon he shared that information to his brothers and sisters. Now the whole family's cracking coconuts open over these rocks. And what happened is during the 100th monkey effect is when the 100th monkey on that island was able to learn how to crack that coconut and, consume the water and the milk inside, other monkeys on neighboring islands all of a sudden figured out to do the same. So that's the 100th monkey effect. And so can we have that ability to do that through psychedelics, through our own healing? I would like to say yes. And so within that will be our shift, is to awaken consciousness together. So that's me, guys. That's Lane. There's that little information on my website, soulline.life. You can follow a little bit more of my journey on @Carlson Lane. And